सर्वोपनिषदो गावः दुग्धा गोपालनन्दनः पार्थो वत्सः सुदीर्भोक्ता दुग्धं गीतामृतं महत् योगाभ्यास विधिर्योगी चतुर्था योग साधनम् योग सिद्धि स्वयोगस्य पारम्यं षष्ठ उच्यते। योऽयं योगस्त्वया प्रोक्तः साम्येन मधुसूदन एतस्याहं न पश्यामि चञ्चलत्वात् स्थितिं स्थिराम्। चञ्चलं हि मनः कृष्ण प्रमाथि बलवदृढम् तस्याहं निग्रहं मन्ये वायोरिव सुदुष्करम्. This is Arjuna's 8th question. In a way, it is not an explicit question. Arjuna here is just stating his concern. Therefore, it is an implicit question. But it is a very relevant and significant question that Arjuna is raising on behalf of all of us. Now, before we dive into the question itself, let us understand the context of this question. This question happens to be in the 6th chapter of the Gita, Dhyana Yoga. Arjuna says, "Hey Krishna, yoyam yogas tvaya proktah samyena madhusudhana etasyaham na pashyami chanchalatvat sthithim sthiram." Hey Madhusudana, we need to carefully observe in this conversation between Krishna and Arjuna. We should always carefully observe the way they address each other. The way Krishna addresses Arjuna, the way Arjuna addresses Krishna. Both of them use different names. We know Krishna has several names. We know Arjuna also has several names. And if we observe throughout the Gita, depending on the context of the conversation, both of them refer to a particular name. Now here, Arjuna is calling Krishna Madhusudana. Hey Madhusudana, yoyam yogastvaya proktaha, the yoga that you have been teaching so far. Now what is the context? Krishna has been explaining to Arjuna the Ashtanga Yoga. The 6th chapter, which is titled Dhyana Yoga, Krishna details the process of dhyana, meditation. And dhyana happens to be at the very summit of the process of Ashtanga Yoga. We all try to perform dhyana and we fail. We don't need to wonder about why we fail, because dhyana is not easy. Dhyana is at the very summit of Ashtanga Yoga. So Krishna teaches Arjuna Ashtanga Yoga. Now Ashtanga Yoga incidentally is world renouncing. It's a path of renunciation of the world. So Krishna teaches Arjuna about a successful yogi who practices Ashtanga Yoga and who has reached the summit of dhyana and samadhi. Krishna says how this yogi ascends. Krishna says such a yogi goes through an ascending order And Krishna presents an ascending order of a yogi who cultivates what Krishna calls Samadarshana. Samadarshana in 4 stages. At the very first stage, Krishna explains that the yogi, by practicing Ashtanga Yoga, cultivates an expansive perspective. An expansive perspective of understanding the sameness of the Atman within each and every living entity. The yogi is able to see that within every living entity, the nature of the Atman as characterized by Jnana and Ananda is the same. The yogi is able to cut through the differences. This world is full of diversity. This world is characterized by diversity. But the yogi is able to see the underlying unity. This is the first stage. The sameness of the Atman. The Atman in me is characterized by Jnana and Ananda. The Atman in each and every one of you is characterized by Jnana and Ananda. So the yogi is able to see beyond the apparent differences, the underlying sameness. In the second stage, the yogi also is able to quote unquote see the Paramatman within the indweller. Realize the Paramatman within each and every living entity. Not only is able to see the Paramatma in all, he is also able to see all in Paramatma. This is the beauty of Bhagavan's immanence and transcendence. This is the second stage of the yogi. The third stage, Krishna explains, is a stage where this yogi is fixed, is able to fix his mind on Bhagavan all the time, knowing his relationship with Bhagavan. Here, Samadarshana is each and every one is a part belonging to that one whole, W-H-O-L-E. Each stage we see the perspective of Samadarshana expanding. In the first stage, Samadarshana, all are same, all are equal. The second stage of Samadarshana, in all, Paramatma indwells and all dwell in Paramatma. In the third stage, the yogi is able to see, just like how a cell within a body suddenly realizes that it is part of 100 trillion cells, all interconnected and belonging to one whole called the body. So the yogi realizes his unique constitutional position. He is a part, Bhagavan is a whole. And in the fourth stage, the yogi reaches a stage where, for him, he no longer sees any bodily differences whatsoever, because having reached a stage where he is able to be constantly fixed on Bhagavan and Bhagavan alone, he is able to deal in his daily life, he is able to lead life within the world by transcending dualities, by cutting through the differences and only practicing Samadarshana. This is what Krishna explains. And immediately, Arjuna has this question. Arjuna asks Krishna, hey Krishna, yoyam yogastvaya proktaha samyena madhusudhana. Samyena, yogaha samyena. Hey Krishna, hey Madhusudhana, this yoga of equanimity of mind, this yoga of mental concentration and meditation, this yoga of reaching a state of Samadarshana that you have taught me, this yoga, Samyena Madhusudhana, he says, Etasyaham na pashyami chanchalatvat sthitim sthiram. This yoga that you have taught me, I think it is not practical. I see it. It seems not practical to me, Hey Krishna. Chanchalatvad sthithim sthiram. Why? Because it is not only impractical, it seems impractical, it also seems not durable. Because how can this mind, which by design is only receiving inputs which are all different in nature, everything that is presented to the mind, there is no sameness. Anything I look around, I only see diversity. I only see different faces, different kinds of configuration of matter, different entities, each having its own configuration. And the mind is dutifully receiving all this through the sensory organs and is presenting to me. By design, it only presents differences. So even for a moment, I can perceive sameness. To be focused on Samadarshana seems to be not durable. This yoga of Samadarshana you are teaching, Hey Krishna, is also, to me, to my little mind, is impractical, Hey Krishna. Chanchalam hi manak Krishna, pramati bhalavadridham, tasyaham nigraham manye vayoriva sudushkaram. Arjuna here is not questioning Krishna. This eighth question is very interesting. He's only stating his concern. This is the characteristic of an ideal student. It's like an ideal student looking at a teacher and saying, what you have been teaching is very difficult for me to comprehend. It's very difficult for me to comprehend. Arjuna is exactly stating a concern here, because he's giving an example here. Chanchalam hi manak Krishna. Krishna, you know that this mind is chanchala, fickle. It is restless, reckless, relentless, ruthless. And this mind, you're asking me to get this mind to focus on the sameness of the Atman within. And this mind is like a very powerful wind. How can a powerful wind be stopped and its direction be changed with a simple instrument like a handheld fan? This is exactly what you are asking me to do, Hey Krishna. Hey Madhusudhana, the one who killed the wicked demon Madhu. The demon stands for Tamas and Rajas. Madhusudhana, you are the one, Hey Krishna, you have easily vanquished the evil forces of Rajas and Tamas, and you alone can help me do the same. How can I stop the mind which is designed to only chase differences? It is going after differences. Now you're asking me to stop it from doing what it is designed to do and transform it. With my little ability, I don't see how I can do that. Therefore, Hey Krishna, you have to clarify this to me. What you have taught is very interesting, very profound, but I think it's not possible. It seems very impossible to me. This is a question that we all keep asking ourselves. So Arjuna also asked the same question. So we need to see how Krishna, as a great teacher, empathizes with Arjuna. That is one characteristic of Krishna, very patient. We all need to learn this supreme quality. Very patiently, with great empathy, he encourages Arjuna, encourages him to keep asking these questions. And Krishna clarifies and answers every time. Now, we may have this question as to why Krishna, while he has been prescribing Karma Yoga, which is a path of action, also goes at length talking about a path which requires renunciation of the world. Because the Dhyana Yoga which Krishna teaches requires renouncing the world, requires solitude, requires to get away, renounce the world. Now, we may wonder why Krishna is also talking about this path. This is Krishna's clever way of enabling Arjuna make his own conclusion. On the one hand, Krishna can always say, Arjuna, this is not right for you. The path of renouncing the world is not right for you. That is one way to say, which Krishna also keeps repeating. But another way also is to say, to detail that path and to demonstrate how difficult that path is, so that Arjuna himself can say, hey Krishna, you don't need to tell me, I know it is very difficult. So somehow Krishna also wants to enable Arjuna make the conclusion. So Krishna here explains the path of Dhyana Yoga in such a detail that Arjuna himself comes to a state where, now I know why you have been prescribing Karma Yoga to me and not the path of Jnana, and to take the path of Ashtanga Yoga. Krishna, while teaching the path to Dhyana, he teaches every step of Ashtanga Yoga. Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi. While this path is not suitable to all, definitely the first phase, the first parts of this process is very, very relevant and important, which is all about mind control and mind mastery, which is relevant, which is important for any path that is chosen. Especially the parts of yamas and niyamas, where Krishna talks about the right conduct of living. Yamas are all to do about restraints, what not to do, restraining thought, word, and deed. Niyamas, on the other hand, is all about observances, what to do. Yamas are to do with how the practices for my inner world. Sorry, practices for my outer world. Yamas are to do with practices for my outer world. How I conduct myself with the world outside. Niyamas are to do with my own behavior towards myself. Practices for my inner world. Therefore, Krishna ensures that the foundation, the practices, the code of conduct required to master the mind is taught in such a detail that whatsoever path one adopts, mastering the mind is always taken care of. It is very important. Chanchalam hi mana, Krishna Arjuna says. That's why Krishna always constantly says, how do you control this mind? How do you bring it to focus? How do you ensure that you have mastery over your mind? Satya, Asteya, Brahmacharya, Aparigraha. These are all yamas. Truthfulness. Asteya, non-stealing. Brahmacharya. Brahmacharya, in a broad sense, is applicable to each and every one of us. Brahmacharya is not the ashrama of Brahmacharya. Brahmacharya as a code of conduct is non-excess, moderation, regulation, managing body's vitality, ensuring that the energy of the body is consumed properly, is conserved and consumed. That is what Brahmacharya is applicable to each and every one of us. Aparigraha, non-possessiveness, not being greedy. Shaucha, purity. Santosha, contentment. These are for code of conduct for one's own individual development, individual ethics. Niyamas are for individual ethics, yamas are for social ethics. Shaucha, Santosha, Ishvara Pranidhana, surrender to Bhagavan. The Krishna talks about the code of conduct necessary to cultivate mastery over the mind. Krishna gives a very, in the process of talking about mind mastery, Krishna stresses the importance of managing excess, regulation and moderation. Yuktahara viharasya, yukta cheshtasya karmasu, yukta swapnavabhodasya, yogo bhavati dukkha, he says. Yogo bhavati dukkha. How do we overcome sorrows of samsara? The fundamental prerequisite, Krishna says, is yukta ahara, yukta vihara, yukta swapnavabhodasya, moderation in ahara, eating, moderation in vihara, entertainment, moderation in sleeping, yuktaha cheshtasya karmasu, moderation in working. Unfortunately for us, moderation is not there in our dictionary at all. Either we starve or we hog, eating. Either we work 15 hours, 16 hours, or we are lazy doing nothing or procrastinating all the time. Either we are, we call this binge watching, watching TV for hours and hours together, or completely trying to suppress. Krishna is not against entertainment. Something which all of us in satsang need to know. Outside satsang, people think, once you are in satsang, all entertainment is gone. One becomes very serious. No smile, no laugh. You have to be very serious. No movies, no TV, no entertainment. We have to be very, very serious because Krishna wants everyone to be very serious. Entertainment is part and parcel of living. Krishna never talks about suppression. That's why he says, Yukta Vihara, entertainment. Vihara is necessary. Moderated entertainment. It is very, in the context of mind mastery, this moderation and regulation becomes so very critical. Let me give an analogy. Imagine somebody walks in and steals a huge amount of money. We immediately notice and catch hold and we try to prevent the robber. We all do that. But imagine somebody is stealing 1 dirham at a time, and that somebody happens to be somebody whom we trust or whom we know very well, who is always with us. We don't even notice that stealing. Daylight robbery happening, we either ignore or we don't even acknowledge. Daylight robbery is happening all the time by the mind. This is what mind does. We know it is our companion all the time, our trusted companion, and in small bits it keeps stealing. What does it steal? Our time. Very small bits. It's only 1 minute. Let me check this message. 1 minute. 1 minute. And if you put together on a sheet of paper that 1 minute of distraction, the time taken away from what one needs to do in 24 hours, we will see what is the percentage of time that has been stolen. Entertainment, therefore, Krishna says, is important, but yukta vihara. You should watch movies, no doubt, but something which obviously should be inspiring. Not those where people are scheming behind each other and trying to kill and do all kinds of things which we, the baggage that we will carry. But anything that is inspiring, entertainment that is inspiring, no doubt, should not be avoided. But even that has to be moderated. Eating has to be moderated. Now, there was this man who went to a doctor and said, "Doctor, I want to live a long, long life." Doctor said, "Sure, why not? From today onwards, you must stop eating rice." Man said, "What?" He was a rice eater. So we were shocked. Doctor said, "Not only that, you must stop eating sweets." This man happened to have an acute sweet tooth. His jaw dropped. More shock. What? No salt from tomorrow. No tamarind. No chili. So on. He went on listing. He said, "Stop, doctor. Let me tell you. Please, clarify this. If I do all of this, are you really sure I'm going to live long?" Doctor said, "You know what? Irrespective of how long you live, one thing is assured. If you do this way, it will seem as though you will live for eternity." The man, basically, essentially, when it comes to moderation, it is very, very difficult for us to come around this concept of what is balanced and moderate. And Krishna therefore says, if we are not moderated, there is no way we can meditate. There's no point in complaining that we are unable to focus our minds if our lifestyle is not conducive. We eat heavily, and then if we think we can focus, bring our mind to attention, meditate, it's not going to happen. At the same thing, if we stretch ourselves too much beyond what the body can actually withstand, it's not going to be possible for us to bring our mind into focus and meditate. So fundamentally here, Krishna talks about that is why brahmacharya, in the context of dhyana yoga, is about avoiding excess, all kinds of excess. And Krishna says, the yogi who practices this regulated lifestyle and living, and who slowly over a period of time masters his mind, he reaches a state Krishna beautifully explains. He says, "Prashanta manasam henam, prashanta manasam henam, yoginam, sukhamuttamam, upaiti shantarajasam, brahmabhutam akalmasham." Here, while the shloka is structured in one way, we need to look at the process, the ladder here Krishna is building. Yoginam, akalmasham, shantarajasam, prashanta manasam, sukhamuttamam. The yogi who practices, the yogi who puts effort on this path prescribed by Krishna, akalmasham, he eradicates all the sins in his mind. The mind has three kinds of faults: mala, vikshepa, avarana. Mala is impurities. Kama, krodha, lobha, moha, mada, matsaryas. If we need to eliminate all these impurities, one needs to practice karma yoga. The antidote for impurities of the mind is karma yoga. Vikshepa is the mind is always turbulent, oscillation. That is, so therefore, the turbulent mind, oscillation of the mind. And what is the antidote? Dhyana. Avarana, wheel of ignorance is avarana. What is the antidote for avarana? Jnana. Now, akalmasham is removing all impurities. Shantarajasam, then the mind becomes When the impurities are removed, then the mind becomes calm and composed. Shanta Rajasam, Prashanta Manasam, Prashanta Manasa, not just Shanta Manasa, Prashanta Manasa. All kinds of delusions are removed. Then one understands that I am distinct and different from my own body and my mind. That distance is built between the I and the body complex. Sukha Mutta. That's when one experiences real Sukha. We can look at this process as the unclouding of the intellect. The intellect, which is supposed to be used, we saw the last session, how important is the functioning of the intellect. If the intellect is not functioning properly, we cannot cut through, analyze, and understand reality. If the intellect is clouded with vasanas, clouding is the vasanas in the mind, they kind of stick to the intellect. It's like when we use a knife, if the knife is sticky, then it loses its utility. I cut onions and then I use the same knife and cut a mango. The mango's taste gets completely, it goes for a toss. Similarly, the intellect dipped with the vasanas becomes sticky and can no longer, it will distort reality. Our discriminatory capabilities goes for a toss. So the intellect, the unclouding of the intellect has to happen. The intellect, when it identifies with the vasanas, it cannot function properly. We all know this famous story of Akbar Birbal. We read, children would have read this in Amar Chitrakatha. Akbar Birbal. It seems Akbar had a nurse who actually, as he was growing up, it was the nurse who was actually feeding him, taking care of him. So he had that attachment to the nurse, and not only to the nurse, he had a greater attachment to the son of the nurse. And he almost considered that son of the nurse as his elder brother, because they drank the milk from the same mother. So they were so very attached. With that attachment, with that identification, with that elder brother, it seems Akbar was not able to look at all the atrocities that he did. To that extent, he got away with doing all kinds of atrocities. And one fine day, it seems he walked into the court and he said he wanted some villages for himself, and he was made the king of those villages. And on top of it, he asked for Birbal, saying, I need your minister to come with me. You are so very privileged to have somebody like this. So Akbar was so very attached to him, in his intellect not really able to see through reality, accepted and said, Birbal, you must accompany him. Birbal being Birbal, he said, you know what? Your elder brother deserves my elder brother. But said, your elder brother? I never knew you had an elder brother. Let me bring him tomorrow. Then the next day, everybody is waiting, and Birbal walks into the court dragging a bull. He said, this is my elder brother who can accompany him. But said, what nonsense is this? How can you be his elder? The bull be your elder brother? Both of us drank the milk from the same mother, so he is my elder brother. Akbar then realized his mistake. A clouded intellect cannot cut through and present reality as reality. So Krishna talks about unclouding the intellect, cleaning the mind. At 3 stages he talks about. Cleaning the mala, the dirt. And how do we do that? Nishkama karma. Karma yoga is the antidote, very clearly. And then cleaning and removing vikshepa, the oscillations in the mind. How? Constantly doing dhyana, contemplation. And then avarana, the wheel of ignorance, jnana. Jnana, the light of jnana will remove the wheel of ignorance. Now, Arjuna's question of Chanchalam Himana Krishna Pramati Bhalavad Dridham. Tasyaham nigraham manye vayoriva sudushkaram. So how do I now manage this fickle mind and practice this yoga? Hey Krishna, Krishna gives a simple formula. Arjuna, there is only, let me give you a very simple formula. The simple formula is twofold. Abhyasa, Vairagya. Simple. Abhyasa, Vairagya. Now, our masters give a beautiful analogy for how do we tame the mind. How do we tame the mind? The mind is like a wild bull. It's not only a wild bull, it is a ferocious bull. Now, if you go near a ferocious bull, it will gore us to death. It's not easy. Leave alone holding it or trying to ride it. One cannot even approach it. So what do you do to tame this bull? One has to necessarily go through a process. Taming this wild, ferocious bull, there is a process involved. The first step is to build a fence around it. Allow the bull to wander, but build a fence around so that it cannot come out of the fence and attack. First is that, building a fence around. Then, on a daily basis, carry the grass. And as one carries the grass, the bull will come rushing, but there is a fence. So you just throw it. You don't even go near the fence. You just throw it, starts munching, eating the grass. Do this every day, day in, day out. Do this regularly. The bull will get familiar with the person who is bringing the grass every day and throwing the grass. Now the bull knows after many days that this person is feeding me. Ferocity will slowly come down. Then after a few days, take the grass, stand outside the fence, thrust the grass, hold it, but thrust it in. The bull will come, start munching in, hold it. But still, you're outside the fence and still you cannot touch it. Do this few more days. And after many, many days, holding the grass as the bull starts munching, slowly start touching it. Slowly starts caressing it, holding it. The bull will get used to it. And after many, many days of that practice, then standing outside the fence, give the grass, hold its hearts. It will slowly allow. Do it many, many days. Then finally venture inside the fence. Slowly hold it. And eventually the bull will allow you to ride it. So this is a process of taming the bull. It's a long process. We cannot say why I cannot ride the bull on the first day. Similarly, we cannot ask this question as to why my mind, I'm not able to get it focused on day one. Krishna says, Abhyasa Vairagya. Mind is also like a child. A child requires both monitoring and mentoring. A child needs to be monitored to see where all the child is going, its association, to ensure that the child is associated with the right people. So that monitoring is needed. So Vairagya is all about monitoring the mind. Raga, attachment. Vairagya is coming out of attachment. It is the awareness that every mustard seed of material pleasure is always mixed with a mountain of pain. This awareness, Vairagya, is that awareness that every mustard seed of material pleasure is mixed with a mountain of pain. And therefore, cultivating the practice of not emotionally investing in sense objects. No, we are all constantly looking at where to invest our money. We all know we cannot invest in assets which will not give us returns. You know that. Similarly, we cannot invest emotionally in sense objects because that emotional investment is not going to give us returns, lasting returns. Any sense object, whatever it is, that emotional investment that is made is going to only fire back. Forget about lasting returns. Even the immediate returns are very fleeting, temporary, imaginary. That is Vairagya. On the other hand, Abhyasa, practice, practice, practice. Krishna gives us through, in his exposition in the 6th chapter, gives 3 simple principles. Practicing simplicity. Practicing simplicity. When we reflect on it, it may seem these are all simple things. Obviously, as a great French philosopher once said, common sense is anything but common. Many things which are fundamental are very simple. Life is supposed to be simple. We make it complicated and complex. So practicing simplicity, practicing clarity, practicing purity. Simplification, clarity, purification, all the time. Reduce the workload of making irrelevant choices. We are making many decisions in our day-to-day lives. We are constantly making many decisions, taking several choices. But if we really analyze how much time and energy we waste on taking decisions on matters which are irrelevant in the long run. Simplification is something which we are all far, far away from. Our lives have become so very complicated. Nothing is simple. Everything is complex. So practicing simplicity, abhyasa. If there is no simplicity, the mind cannot be managed, controlled, and mastered if there is complexity. Clarity of what is my priority. Knowing that there is a difference between what matters to the world and what should really matter to me. We are all driven by what matters to the world all the time. Purification. Purification is desire management. We cannot do away with desires. The mind, if has to be mastered, it's not about killing desires, because killing desire, annihilating desires is impractical. Krishna, throughout the Gita, never says kill desires. He only says transform your desires, purify your desires. Discriminate between healthy desire and unhealthy desire. And it is like when the desires are not managed in the mind is completely in chaos. There is anarchy in the mind. It is like in a room filled with multiple people, if left alone, the room is going to be chaos. Completely with there's going to be no order. The mind, and then when there is no order, when there is disorder, whoever is dominant is going to drive. So the dominant vasanas in the mind will take over. And this is exactly what happens. Now, what do we then need to do? We need to necessarily bring in a healthy hierarchy in the mind. A healthy hierarchy is required. If anything needs to be properly executed, there has to be a proper command chain, healthy command chain. The mind, so desires also have to be put in an hierarchy, prioritized. The healthy desires, which are necessary for a holistic well-being, needs to have topmost priority. But what happens if we don't organize our desires? And when we look at the way we go around fulfilling our desires, we always see that all the unwanted, irrelevant desires we keep fulfilling, and in that process, there is no time for us to the most important desires for which give meaning to our life and living. And therefore, it's like raw power is like your desiring is raw power. Desiring is a faculty, unique faculty. Raw power is like petrol in a container. It is of no use. It is also dangerous. This raw power needs to become used power. It's like taking that petrol and putting it into the car. But petrol in the car, yes, the car will move. But if it goes, instead of going to the temple, if it goes to a bar, that's also a problem. So it is not just about using the car. There has to be a meaning, a purpose. It has to be not just used power, harnessed power. The power needs to be harnessed. A meaning needs to be attached. The mind needs to be given a purpose. Every desire needs to be given a meaning, a purpose in life. Something which will take us in the right direction. If that purpose, if that meaning is not attached, yes, the mind will drive. It will take in its own direction. The mind is chanchala, fickle, but if that fickleness needs to be regulated and a purpose has to be given, and then when it goes, harness and goes in the right direction, then we can access higher power. So, abhyasa, practice, is so very important in terms of how we slowly and steadily shape the mind, manage the desires in our mind, build order and hierarchy, and assign meaning and purpose, and get the mind to drive in the direction that we need, and eventually connect with the higher power. So Krishna says, hey Arjuna, there are only two things that we need to do in order to manage this fickle mind, in order to control it, and in order to master it. Abhyasa and Vairagya, he says. Now Arjuna understands this now very clearly. Now he sees this path of a yogi, the path of a yogi progressing all the way to that supreme state of sukha, that bliss and happiness. And Arjuna now has another question. Again, a question that all of us have constantly, we keep asking this question all the time. Ayatihi shraddhayopetaha, ayatihi shraddhayopetaha, yogat charati manasaha. Hey Krishna, shraddhayo upetaha, shraddhaya upetaha. If a yogi strives on this path, if a yogi strives on this path prescribed by you with all earnestness, with all enthusiasm, or rather let me call it initial enthusiasm, ayatihi, but is not steadfast in practice. Now we can all easily relate. Initial enthusiasm, no steadfastness in practice. Arjuna says, and therefore he gets dragged away from the path. He gets dragged away from the path. Aprapyam yoga samsiddhim, yoga samsiddhi. Therefore, he with all initial enthusiasm gets onto the track, onto this path, and is moving with all earnestness and initial enthusiasm. But because of lack of steadfastness, he gets dragged away and he does not attain the goal. Kam gatin Krishna gacchati. Hey Krishna, what happens to that person? Essentially, what happens to all of us? He says, that person is like a cloud which is separated from a bunch of other clouds, he says. See, when a cloud is isolated, it becomes worthless. An isolated cloud can neither give enough shade nor can become a rain-bearing cloud. Arjuna's question is, this person has done great sacrifices. So he has sacrificed all his material pleasures and he is on this path. And And even spiritually, he is not progress. He is neither there nor here. The Trisanka Swarga, neither there nor here. What happens to this person? Where will he go? Kam gatim Krishna gachati. This is like another excuse to say, should I go on this path at all? This is a nice excuse. Why do all this? Let me just enjoy this life, whatever it is, we will see. Next life, who knows what? Krishna immediately answers and says, Arjuna, whatever the progress that you make on this journey is preserved, he says. He says, no effort gets wasted. There is zero wastage of effort. Every step that you have taken, hey Arjuna, on this path, all the effort that you have put in, the jnana that you have gained, the sadhana that you have performed, all the knowing and doing that has taken place, nothing goes wasted. Straightforward answer. He wants to arrest Arjuna's thought process here. Because if you go further here, it's a meaningless discussion. Krishna very categorically says, don't even go there, because let me assure you, it doesn't go wasted. All that it happens is, one may not get moksha in this very janma. He says, such a person definitely will go to higher planes of existence and will come back to environments where it will be conducive for him to continue the journey. Wherever he left off, he will come back, the person, the Atman will come back so that he can continue on the journey, on this path of yoga. It could be, and Krishna says, whatever the path, it could be a path of a karmanishta, the path of a jnananishta, whether one has been practicing Ashtanga yoga, wherever the person left off, got completely distracted and taken away from, for whatever reasons, I assure you, the guarantee is, the person would come back, he would go. It's just that the Atman would remain in the cycle of samsara, but would come back and take off. And Krishna uses this context, this question of Arjuna, to basically say, let me tell you, Arjuna, this person comes back and obviously is on the path, and there are several paths available. There are several paths available, as I already listed to you, for progressing and attaining the goal. But let me tell you, hey Arjuna, let me tell you a simple formula for you. Krishna says, you were very concerned. I can look at your face, hey Arjuna. You are very concerned. Chanchalam hi mana Krishna. How can I conquer this mind? The mind is so very powerful. It's a struggle. Krishna looks at Arjuna and says, there is no need for you to struggle here, Arjuna. Don't struggle alone. You can conquer the mind in partnership. And I am there with you. Yoginam api sarvesham atkatenam taratmanam shraddhavan bhajate yomam same yuktamo mataha. For the first time, Krishna brings in Bhakti Yoga in the Gita. This is the major transition that happens. Scaling of the peak from one peak to the other happens towards the end of the 6th chapter. And Krishna also uses this opportunity to look at Arjuna and say, I have been telling so far more about you. Let me start telling about me. Because Arjuna, when he says, you don't need to struggle, the greatest yogi of all the yogis, the greatest yogi is a bhakti yogi. Bhakta is the greatest, he says. And he says, hey Arjuna, you do not need to struggle with your mind. You can conquer the mind in partnership with me. Arjuna, obviously, or like any of us can ask this question. I understand. Hey Krishna, then who are you? You have to wait, Arjuna. Let me take you completely to the next all-important topic of knowing me. And that's where the 7th chapter begins. Until then, Let's keep contemplating on this concluding shloka of the 6th chapter. Yoginam api sarvesham matkatenantaratmana shraddhavan bhajate yomam same yukta tamo mataha. Shraddhavan bhajate yomam. With shraddha and bhakti, one can not conquer the mind, one can present the mind to Krishna and he will conquer the mind. Krishna will conquer the mind on our behalf. All we need to do is know the art of delegation. Until then, let's contemplate on Krishna's compassion in clarifying with great patience Arjuna's questions. We have reached 9 questions of Arjuna so far out of 18 questions. Midway, few more weeks to go. We too, like Krishna, need to be patient. Sarvam Sri Krishna Arpanamastu.